that produces Ignite Tampa Bay. On behalf of the TechNova team, we are truly happy to have you with us tonight, and we hope that you and your loved ones are safe and well. 9 months ago, as we began planning for Ignite 2020, including a kickoff event, rehearsal, and after party, I expected to be standing on stage tonight looking out at 600 of you from across our beautiful region as I delivered these opening remarks. Unfortunately, this evening, the Palladium Theater looks like this. When it became clear we had to cancel this year's event, our speaker selection committee had already chosen the first group of speakers from about 100 applications submitted by members of the community. We're very disappointed we can't have those speakers sharing their stories with you tonight, but you can rest assured you will see them and many others, maybe even yourself, on stage in 2021. Please make sure that you're one of the first to know when we open the call for speakers by joining our meetup group. And please help us spread the word by sharing our hashtag IgniteTB as you post on social media this evening and in the future. For over a decade, 30-plus volunteers have come together to make the annual Ignite Tampa Bay possible. The 2020 virtual event is smaller, but the effort is still large. The Ignite 2020 organizing team includes Tracy Ingram, Ken Evans, myself, Alyssa Kennedy, Wayne Rassinen, and Nakia Kelly. We would also like to extend a special thanks to Joey DeVia, Chris Mikowski, Wendy Borland, Fred Soriano, Niall Nickel, and Deborah Neff for their efforts in making Ignite possible. And we want to thank everyone who made this event and every Ignite Tampa Bay possible. We love you all. We could never bring you Ignite Tampa Bay without the help of some amazing sponsors. Ignite Tampa Bay, our spring event, and Bar Camp Tampa Bay, our fall event, are produced by the TechNova team and brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors, including Greg Ross Monroe and the team at SourceToad, who have been with us from the very beginning. Tampa IP, also known as the Tampa Innovation Alliance. The Undercroft, a cybersecurity guild located in Ybor City, who are developing the next generation of global cybersecurity leaders. A big thanks to our annual sponsors, KnowBe4, ISC Squared, and the Jim Moran Institute for Global Entrepreneurship. We also want to thank our event sponsors and our community partners. Our event sponsors not only provide cash, but they also help us in recruiting speakers and volunteers from across the community, as do our community partners. It takes 100-plus volunteers from across the Tampa Bay community to make these events possible every year, so this is no small effort. We sincerely appreciate their efforts in spreading the word and in making our community great. Please join us in thanking them and supporting them and their organizations. We could never pull this off. Yes, it's 2020. Who knew it would be the year of toilet paper hoarding and the Rona? 4 months ago, the only people in America who regularly used the phrase social distancing were epidemiologists. Now, our daily phrases include terms like lockdown, self-quarantine, shelter in place, face mask, and we are not talking about those used by the Lightning or the Bucks. This evening's MC needs no introduction. It's someone we've all come to know more intimately than we would like over the past few weeks. It's responsible for closing schools and sending kids home from college, empty shelves, keeping us out of the gym and off the beaches. Someone we've all come to know and despise. It's pandemic enemy, the chief isolation officer of the COVID-19. Normally, we would expect applause for our MC, but this year, feel free to shout out anything that comes to mind. Vent your frustrations, but please, don't throw anything at the screen because we want you to enjoy the rest of the show. Now that you've got that out of your system, grab yourself a quarantini, sit back, and relax. Because this year, everyone has VIP seating for the event. And in case you thought we We know that no Ignite Tampa Bay would be complete without an after party. This year, you can join us from the comfort of your home, in your PJs, with a cocktail in hand and absolutely no need to Uber home. We can't wait for you to share your thoughts on tonight's event and the community. Yes, we know. It might feel like the world is on fire right now, like we're literally burning it to the ground. But we should remember that there are thousands of people in our community that have pulled together, from innovation to sewing masks for those in need, whether it's donating hundreds of thousands of dollars, making meals for first responders, teaching kids to bake, simply staying at home, or in the case of those who have recovered from the virus, like my friend Jeff Catherall, who donate plasma to help others battling. It's times like these that can bring out the best in people. We hope that you will show the world your best by being kind and extending a hand to help others. Now, speaking about the best in people, we have some amazing talks that we've gathered from across previous years of Ignite Tampa Bay to share with you tonight. And when I say Tampa Bay, this isn't just Tampa and St. Pete. Ignite speakers come from 7 Bay Area counties. They range in age from 14 to over 80, with varied race, ethnic, and gender identities, representing the true diversity of our great region. If you've never been to an Ignite event, this is how it works. Speakers get exactly 5 minutes and 20 slides to convey their message. The slides auto-advance every 15 seconds, so they absolutely have to keep pace. It's tough. I know because I've done it, but it's also worth it to share your vision and inspire others. I truly love this event because it gives people in our community, those who are known and unknown change makers, an opportunity to share their passion with others, and it motivates people to take action or look at our community and the world from a very different perspective. Most of those who give talks at Ignite Tampa Bay have never been on a big stage before, but they all have something in common. They care. They really care deeply about something that has touched their lives in a profound way, and that is what makes this event special. Our goal at Ignite is to inspire and motivate positive action. So enough talk. Let's get to it. Let's do this.
All right, close your eyes for me for a second. I want you to imagine something. It's a gorgeous day, it's sunny, not too hot, you're on the interstate, you're driving to work, and all of a sudden there's a car in front of you coming from the opposite direction. You have no time to react. You crash, and all of a sudden your car's tumbling into the median. Now you survive, you're good, but you end up having to go to the emergency room. Now you can open your eyes, by the way, because I'm cute and you want to make sure that you see that. Now imagine going to the emergency room and having somebody say to you, well, we're here to save your ass, not kiss it. Now, you all are virtuous people. We all believe in things like equality and all that stuff. But tonight I want to talk about equity. Equity means that we all get the resources that we need based on what we need as individuals instead of collectively. And we always say we don't care if people are red, black, blue, whatever, but color matters in our society. These are household incomes by race. In 2017, Asian Americans were over $81,000 a year, African Americans just over $40,000. That's a big difference. It's a big difference. So what happens? We end up with 39.7 million of our neighbors in poverty. We end up with millions of people without health insurance when we live in a system where your access to care, the quality of your care, depends on your health insurance. And for most of those people, 77% had at least one person in their household that was working full time. For our youngest population, number one cause of death, injuries. You know those things that send you to the emergency room where they save your ass, not kiss it? Number two, suicide. We don't talk about mental health. We don't want to talk about it. Man up, okay? That's what we tell people, and we have people that are suffering. Suicide. Men, complete suicide, 3.5 times more than women. It's not acceptable. People are dying. African Americans, our babies are dying 2.5 times more than our Asian American babies. That $40,000 difference kind of makes a little bit of a difference. Now, more education you have, more you work out, more you go to the gym. Oh yeah, we're smart, we know that. Well, could it be that the people with less education are working more hours to make up that $40,000 difference? Let's think about that. Well, obesity rates. If you don't have access to good food, you're making less money, you're going to end up with poor health. You're going to end up with more obesity. So why should you care? You've got health insurance. You know, you worked hard for your life. There's no such thing as white privilege. We're all the same. Well, privilege is the difference between not having to think about things, going into a store, having somebody say, how can I help you? And going into a store and having them call loss prevention instead because they think you're stealing. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that whole save your ass versus kiss it and the call-in security. That happened to me. Those are my stories. This is all true. Health is more important than health care. Food you eat, your access to good quality food. If you live in a food desert, you don't have good grocery stores around you, how are you going to be healthy? And as much as we love it, sorry, but produce is indeed more expensive than Captain Crunch. Housing is important, where you live. And here in St. Petersburg, we are more segregated than in other areas. If you don't believe it, look up north of Central Avenue, then look at South St. Pete. In the state of Florida, 21% of our household, 21% of our neighbors are paying half of their income just for housing, not including their utilities. So what are we going to do about it? We want to have a healthy society. It's where we got to start. We got to stop stereotyping people. We got to stop with our unconscious biases, okay? Only when we start seeing color and how all of those different beautiful pieces of color come together can everybody participate in the richness of the tapestry of life. Now, because I do value mental health, if you or somebody you know needs help, tell them to text the word hello to 741-741. Now's a good time to be, putting it into your phone, writing it down somewhere. Share this with your children. Even though you might think, my kids can come to me. They might be able to, but sometimes they may need to talk to somebody before they do. Crisis Text Line has certified crisis counselors, like myself. We're there 24/7 to take care of you. Thank you. Be well.
Okay, all right, so this is my talk. I'm Alex Eikleberry. I'm a local tech entrepreneur, and I've been in Tampa Bay technology for 20 years, and I friggin' love it. I love Tampa Bay. I gotta tell you, I work a lot in the Valley, and sometimes I get this little, Silicon Valley, I get this little kind of thing like, oh, you're kind of in a tech backwater. And by the way, this is not unique to Tampa Bay. If you, in Silicon Valley, anything outside of Silicon Valley is a tech backwater. It's a provocative title, but I used it to get the point across. Places like Tampa Bay are the future. 90% of the future market capitalization in technology will be in places like Tampa Bay, in places like Cincinnati, in places like wherever, Silicon Valley has problems. And I spent a lot of time there. So my Tampa Bay technology journey started back actually in California. We acquired a company in the mid-90s when I was at Quarterdeck, a local company here, Landmark Software, built it to about 100 people. And then I worked in private equity and venture capital investments at Bulldog Capital throughout the Southeast and nationally. Then I ran a company called Sunbelt Software in Clearwater. We grew it to about 450 employees, knowledge workers in Clearwater, Florida. It can be done. And then after that, I sold my company to GFI Software, which is a big European software company. They decided to set up their North American headquarters in Clearwater, Florida. So we had about 400 or 500 employees in downtown Clearwater. Knowledge workers, highly paid knowledge workers. After GFI, I helped a few other companies get going. KnowBe4, which is a company that will do north of 100 million in sales this year in downtown Clearwater, and Malwarebytes, a company actually based in Silicon Valley that has set up a major development center in St. Pete, near the St. Pete Clearwater Airport, and thank you for the Malwarebytes employees that are here. Yeah. I started and sold a company called Maros along the way, and I currently am at a company called Autoloop, 450 employees, downtown Clearwater. You're getting the pitch here, you're getting the message, we can do it, and there's a lot of great talent. So let's talk about Silicon Valley. Maybe we don't have this, although if you go to my offices, we kind of have some of this, and we are hiring. But, you know, maybe we don't have all the cool stuff, and maybe you don't have, you know, you can actually just don't have to take an Uber to Uber, you can just see Uber in Silicon Valley, or you can go down to Google or, you know, Facebook. It's all there, and the cool universities, and some great universities. Maybe we don't have all that stuff, and this incredible ecosystem. But we don't have high turnover, we don't have lack of loyalty, and we don't have the cost. The cost problem is so significant right now in the Valley. If you haven't been out there recently, it'll blow your mind. What we do have in Tampa Bay is incredibly loyal developers, really, really smart people, a strong work ethic, and a phenomenal cost model. And this is why I love the Tampa Bay area. There's some people I know in this audience who've been really, really great devs for many, many years in this area. So my advice, first, create an idea that's bigger than just an employee. Don't just start a nice little, you know, cute tech company. Start something that's going to take on the world. It's going to be bigger than your employees, and they can rally around it. Do something big. Don't worry about being cool. Just don't be a dork. Be effective, right? The cool factor, who cares about Silicon Valley? We're damn cool right where we are, right? Look at this. All right. Now be diverse, be open, be creative, and for God's sakes, be tolerant. There's too many white guys in this business, right? I'm sick of it. Come on. I mean, the people you're going to hire today, some of them look like they're going to steal your car. And it's great. They're smart people. This is out. I went to a meeting with a couple of, actually a large group of investors just a couple years ago. I dressed up. I wore socks. But I was criticized for not having a blazer. WTF. Creativity is a key aspect of a company culture. It is the secret weapon. The previous speaker talked about bringing art into the area. It is so vitally important because creativity is a leading indicator of economic progress. Don't give a damn about the Valley, right? Just don't give a damn about it, right? Now we're talking. Because places like Tampa Bay and other outlying areas are the future of technology. Thank you very much.
All right, so I know a man who makes millions and is one miserable son of a bitch. I know a woman who thinks she's noble, but she's a conniving, money-hungry narcissist. And in other words that I'm not going to quote in this theater. You know, it makes me wonder, why is that? Why is it that some of us have such clarity of purpose and self-awareness and live a life that aligns with all that, right? And others don't. Why is it that drives our internal power, thinking, makes us do what we do and live the lives we live? So I paid attention. I'm old and grumpy and an engineer. And I started looking at things and I said, bottom line, there's a pattern. If you're an asshole for smart things, guess what? You're going to be an asshole for big things. My blinding insight into the obvious, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. But that's not enough. I'm an engineer, right? So I got to have a theory. So I started looking for a theory, right? Now, what's going on? And theories are important because if you think the earth is flat, you'll watch the moon, the sun, know when the next eclipse will happen, but you'll believe the sun revolves around the earth. And you'll be an idiot and wrong. So theories are important. So here's my theory. 6 F's. And no, I'm not talking about food or the other one. Family, fortune, fear, fame, faith, and fun. How much weight you give each determines who you are. This is why we do anything. Family is not just about blood. It's the friends you choose, the people you love just because. It's the people you share a mission with, whether it's a religion, a sports team, a political cause, or just a shared idea you want to spread. Family is our tribe. Family counts for 1/3 of what motivates me. My blood family, my wife, my daughters, my brothers, my cousin and her family, my chosen family, people I call friends. People think of fortune as money, but they're wrong. Fortune is about 3 things: time, money, energy. We trade time for money to build reserves to buy things. Some people value time more than money, others the other way around. I value time more than money and money more than energy. And the sum, my view of fortune, accounts for another 1/3 of what motivates me. It's slightly less than family, so if I can find something to work on that makes me lots of money but hurts my family, won't do it. Fear is a 2-side motivated factor. It can cause action, scare people shitless so they don't do anything, or inaction, scare them to do things that they're afraid of doing. I used to think that fear was not a motivator for me. And I was wrong. I mean, yeah, I jumped out of airplanes. I'm ex-military guy and all that stuff. But I don't go looking for that. It doesn't motivate me. And you can't scare me, those of you that know me, into doing anything I don't want to do. But I did realize that fear of something happening to my family, I gave fear its credit, 5%. Ego, we all got one. So do I. Right? Some people want to be constantly praised. Others just want publicity. And some will do anything, even sacrifice their dignity for celebrity. Fame is not a thing for me. Don't care much about it. My ego doesn't need stroking. If I do a good job, don't praise me, pay me. I don't care much about being a celebrity. And the only reason I'm on this stage tonight is because it's fun. Faith, anything that doesn't require proof, just believe. Like believe that strapping on a bomb and blowing up people will get you to heaven, or a magic chant will cure cancer, or your race is better than another one, so let's kill all the people of the other race. But I'm an engineer. Proof, or at least an internally consistent argument, is required. I say faith doesn't motivate me, but sometimes deep down I believe that people are good and the universe has a balancing act for all this shit. And last, but definitely not least, there's fun, right? The things we do simply because we enjoy them. People ignore their families, blow all their money to go to a sports game. People do anything to have fun. And then there's love. Oh God, the things we do for love, right? Find me a project that I can make money, hang out with my family, and do fishing at the same time, and you had me at fishing. So, but seriously, if I can't find enjoyment in doing something, it ain't happening. I don't do it. So there you have it. 6F, I think, drives us all, and my understanding of mine. I look back at some of the decisions I made, and I found the bad ones because I let the F's drive my brain. And the fun ones was because they were aligned with my F's. So, I'm here. There's my view. Just because I'm loud doesn't mean I'm right. But maybe I gave you something to think about. Have a great night.
This is cool. My passion for live music started out as a lie. I'll admit it, I lied. This is the Cuban Club confession. And I'm telling this story at the request of my daughters, Stephanie Davis and Angela Stewart, so this is sort of a tribute to them. I have to look at him. Big, huge. Jim Morrison, Come On Baby, Light My Fire. My friend and I heard about him playing in Miami, And she lied to her parents, and I lied to my parents, and it was before cell phones. And we hitched a ride from Fort Myers, Florida, to Miami Beach and slept in the park, and we saw him. Yeah. And yes, there was a fire in front of the stage, and yes, he took his clothes off, and that's a bonus for a 13-year-old. And I got that memory forever. Nobody can take that away from me. That was an amazing moment. It was really a lot of fun. That was my first album. My parents bought it for me because it wasn't anti-war, Magical Mystery Tour. That's my most valuable album. That is a Virgil vinyl pressing of The Doors, and it's never been put on a turntable. That is one of my shelves of my record collection. That's my daughter's inheritance. Stephanie gets A through M. Angie gets N through Z. That's because Angie wants the Zappa and Stephanie wants the Doors. And records come from record stores. I worked at a couple of them, managed them, and obviously made no money. But I have all the albums to show for it. And my kids used to browse through those records. It was amazing. We had such a good time. So the point I want to make here is you can't download a live musical experience. I am so sick of hearing people go, I didn't know U2 was in town. I didn't know the Avett Brothers were in town. I didn't. Open your ears up. Follow your favorite bands on Facebook. I have Pinterest boards. In case I become senile, I'll remember every concert I've ever been to. So if you go out to Pinterest, this is just a couple screenshots. It goes about 10 pages because I spend all my money chasing bands. And it goes from way back to my musical tastes have evolved, and it's amazing. So it's nice when I look back, and those are the memories, and yeah, they're all kind of hot and amazing, and holy crap, this speech is about a 1/4 inch deep, but it's fun, right? I wasn't feeling too profound here. So, this is what I just did. U2, 1987. I went to the concert and somebody said, how was it? I said, it changed my life. I just went to U2. Somebody asked me how the concert was. I said, it changed my life. Go. See that? I have to stand in front of it. Wow, that's amazing. That's Red Rocks. I will be there in a week. I go every year. Every year, I go see the Avett Brothers. I'm going to see Shovels and Rope, and then Beck with a full orchestra every year. So don't tell me I've always wanted to go to Red Rocks. Buy a ticket and go. Go there. Go early. Stand in front of the stage and pretend like you're a rock star and see what it looks like, and then stay there at night when the sun sets. So now we're going to go to the live portion of my real photos. Those are all concerts I've seen in the past 6 months, and that's just a few of them. And they're all local venues. So you've got USF, the Avett Brothers. You've got Trampled by Turtles at Janice Live. You've got the State Street. You've got the Joshua Tree, and that's the setup from Abigail Washburn and Bella Fleck at Amelia Island. That's happening all around you. Did you even know that? It's amazing. It's fun. That's where I spend New Year's. I see the Avett Brothers and I hang out with my tribe every New Year's Eve. We didn't do it one year and it really crushed me. It was horrible. So we already have our tickets. We already have airplane tickets. My sickness has evolved into I've been practicing the banjo for 5 years. I suck less, and then I suck even more, depending on the week. And these are all my favorite banjo players, and 3 of them I've seen live this year. I saw Abigail and Bella, I've seen Steve Martin, and I've seen Scott Avett, and I just threw Pete in there because I felt like we needed to put a little bit of a tribute to it. So that's my living room. It's really, my housekeeper is like, why do I clean this house? It's just banjos and a stereo. So I'm Dottie Stewart. I'm a girl that has no name, and this is to Stephanie and Angela.
In Native Hawaiian culture, corals are the origins of all life. And yet corals are dying at alarming rates all around the world. Innovation is the essential forcing function that is needed to address this grand challenge. Take a minute to relax. Take a big breath in. Out. The oxygen you're breathing is essential for you to live. Think about this. 1/3 of the corals in the Great Barrier Reef died in the last year. Should you care? Do you like to breathe? Corals are the rainforests of the sea. 50 to 80% of the oxygen you just breathed came from the oceans, not from the land. So, if you want to breathe, you need a healthy ocean. A healthy ocean needs a healthy coral reef. So the native Hawaiians were correct. We're all connected. Now, if you don't like to breathe, consider this. Corals are, in fact, the protectors of our coastline. They support amazing biodiversity, and they support, in the state of Florida alone, a $6 billion a year economy. What's happening? Corals are being decimated. Over the last couple of decades, they have been just declining in alarming numbers. This is because of human impacts with pollution, poor fishery management practices, etc. But now a more insidious threat is really pushing them to the brink of extinction. I wanted to put a really complicated equation up. I was told I couldn't do that and be a brainy professor, so this will do the trick. It's stress. When you're stressed, you're more susceptible to illness. When corals are stressed, what they do is they spit out the little algae that live in their tissue. That gives them color and that gives them essential nutrients. Without those nutrients, they are even more stressed. And with the really amazing, alarming level of coral bleaching all around the world, this is what is happening. Diseases are spreading. And the very coral reefs that we rely on for our quality of life, our economy, and our children's future are pushed past the tipping point, and they are now sliding into extinction. So innovation is the answer. One of the examples is with the very fast-growing branching corals, and in this case, offshore nurseries that we have developed to look at the threatened staghorn coral. We grow them until they're just large enough, and then we snip off small branches, and we put them down. But all of these corals have also been pre-selected, so they're the corals that have a higher % likelihood to survive when temperature increases go up. And we're seeing some amazing successes in terms of their life expectancy. In nature, very small percentages. With these corals, over 95% success rate after a year because we are selecting those corals that are more likely to survive. But with the massive, very slow-growing corals, it's a very different story. And you're hearing time and time again, many scientists, my colleagues around the world that are throwing up their arms because they're saying we can't do this with these slow-growing corals. This is the statement that you're hearing, and we can't give up now. Innovation will solve the answer. And our scientists have developed very innovative technologies that are not just pushing the frontiers of science, but are really smashing those existing paradigms of science that say you can't do this in just a couple of years. We are able to regrow those 100-year-old coral heads, reskin them in literally 2 years. And we're able to do that while also making sure that the naturally occurring genetic strains of the naturally occurring species of coral are the ones we're putting out there so they'll be there in 100, in 200 years. We have thousands of these small microfragments of coral that we are starting in our land-based nursery to put out into the wild population. This slide shows you a dead coral head. Took well over 100 years to grow. Each one of those little coral fragments we've put on there. And those have been pre-selected so they can withstand ocean acidification, increasing temperature, and coral disease. And this is what happens in a matter of just a couple of years. This screenshot shows you those little coral microfragments have grown and merged together because they're clones of the same mother, and they don't fight with each other. That would take 30 years to happen in nature. It's important. It's very important that we partner, that we share this technology, and we actively work with partners all around the world to share this technology. We want this to be community-based. 2 days ago, I was at our 6th annual Combat Wounded Veterans Challenge Coral Restoration Project at our position in the Florida Keys. And in 1 day, with those combat wounded vets and the young scuba nauts, we planted 500 corals. So, I'm here to tell you, yes, we can restore these coral reefs. Innovation has smashed those paradigms. Together, we can, in our lifetimes, restore these coral reefs here and all around the world. So thank you very much.
By the way, there will be no standing for this presentation. In fact, I want you to slouch even deeper into your chairs and let the Florida flow over you. The reasons for which will become clear very, very shortly. And I'm here basically to say that Florida man and Florida woman are not embarrassments. They are actually going to help us make the 21st century the Floridian century. And I'm going to start by talking about the word superhero. It was first coined in the year 1917, which also happens to be the year that the United States entered World War I, stepping into the path where it would eventually become a superpower. That is not a coincidence. Now, in the year 2013, a Twitter account was created to mock Florida man, calling him the world's worst superhero. I say, ignore worst, but think of Florida man as a superhero. At the very least, he's already accomplished one thing, and that is he has changed Florida's reputation. We are no longer God's waiting room. We are now America's drain pipe for weirdos. And in a moment, I'm going to explain why that's a great thing. But first of all, let's talk about the earliest superhero, and that is Superman. Like most Floridians, Superman is not from here. He's from the planet Krypton. He came here on a rocket ship. Florida man and Florida woman are also largely not from here. They came here on a Greyhound bus. Now, both Superman and Florida man are going through the hero's journey. The only difference is that with Superman, we get to see the entire journey. With Florida man, we only see that moment of despair at the bottom because that's all we ever see in the news stories. Now, there is a movie-making Bible called Save the Cat. Check it out on Amazon. And he talks about this phase called the long, dark night of the soul. But after that comes redemption. That always happens in the movie to the hero. Superman himself is solar-powered. He's powered by sunshine. That's how he gets his strength. Florida man is also powered by sunshine. That sun gives us wonderful tropical climate that also makes it a wonderful place for us to live in. Florida's flat geography is also great for Florida man because it's nice and easy to push a shopping cart with everything you own when there are no hills. The other great thing about Florida is that without 4 months of winter, you have 12 entire months in which to cause mischief and to get into all kinds of activities, a lot of which involve nudity. But guess what? That also works for us as well. Then finally, Officer Jane will know this, is one of the things that gives Florida man his powers is sunshine laws. Since 1909, we have an open government law which makes it easy for any news organization to look up the police blotter and find interesting news stories. But that also allows us to look into what's going on in the government. In fact, even unofficial meetings have to be registered with the media. If other states had open laws, we would see their embarrassing people as well. Case in point on the screen. And then I'd like to talk about other states. There is a state, California, very successful, a lot of overlap with Florida. They have sun and oranges and Disney and the military and the aerospace industry and a fantastic natural resource called weirdos. Ever since the gold rush, then rock and roll and Hollywood and self-help and now Silicon Valley, California has been profiting and prospering thanks to weirdos. There are communities all over now who are trying to brand themselves as weirdo-friendly. And you know why? Because weirdos are a very important part of the creative class, a concept brought to us by Dr. Richard Florida. See what I did there? And that's because they understand that winning isn't normal. You have to do weird stuff to win. Now, I need to talk about supervillains. If we have a superhero, we must therefore have supervillains. The interesting thing about supervillains is they're not all that different from the heroes. Thor fights other Norse gods. Captain America's enemies are other super soldiers. Iron Man's enemies are other rich white guys. Florida man's enemy is somebody who embraces weirdness but makes better life choices. Which brings me to the point, who should Florida man supervillains be? Somebody who does something not normal. Probably you. Normal is going home and watching TV. Weird is participating in community events like this. So here's the thing. You are Florida man supervillains. Go out there and take over the world. And now, the song. Florida man, Florida woman, does whatever a Florida can. Are they weird? Listen, bud. They've got greatness in their blood. Look out. There goes a Florida man. Thanks very much.
They're still looking for Waldo, and oh, hey, welcome to Making STEAM Mainstream. For those of you that are not familiar, STEAM is actually an acronym for an educational movement to engage and expose our kids to science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And we do this in the hopes that they will get into those fields. Now, for some of you, you may recognize the STEM, and we've recently started incorporating the arts into the same movement, right? But STEAM is also a call to action. On the global landscape, the United States has fallen behind in terms of students graduating in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We are also lagging in our rank in grades in science and math. But on the other side, there is a projected boom in STEM job growth in the future. So this is our dilemma and why we have a call to action. We have to replenish those coffers, our innovators, right? The future leaders in terms of tech, science, and mathematics. So there is a positive because those fields are growing, but we have to do our part in order to have the skilled labor force for those fields. Lastly, STEAM is a way of thinking. As a civil engineer, I look at things in a certain way in terms of problem solving and processing. Nowadays, our kids, if they need an answer to a question, they Google it. As adults, we Google it. So we have to make that conscious effort to engage our kids so that they are thinkers, critical thinkers, right? They're thinking analytically, inquiry-based, hands-on, and processing situations and problems so they can give us the problems today for our innovations tomorrow, solutions for the problems for, you know what I mean. They'll be ready, you know what I mean. So how do we do that? How many sports fans do we have in the audience, right? Bucks fans? Florida actually has a thriving hockey team, right? Right? And even baseball, right? How about some other teams? How many people know Team Vision? How about KNO3? You do? Yes, we got one. My family. How about tie-dye gummy divas? The silence, oh, hi, Dad. The silence is deafening. Believe it or not, these are also local teams. These are actually thriving local teams of students between elementary and high school that voluntarily spend countless hours building, designing, and coding robots to compete not only in Florida, not just locally, but nationally and some internationally. And they are winning. They are actually winning, okay? But we don't know their names. We don't know who they are. How many people in here today can say they honestly know the names of the schools within a 5-block radius of where they work? Oh, we got a couple. All right, more family. Hi, guys. How many people can honestly, as parents, you know what your child is doing hands-on in school in terms of STEAM education? Can your child code? Do they know what code is? Do they know the latest applications in drone technology? Can we say that? Right? So this is why we need to be aware of STEM education, STEAM education, as well as STEM education. Let's not forget the arts. What if there were actual opportunities for our kids to letter in robotics? There is a local school here that actually letters their kids in robotics, okay? It is a sport. They are competing and they're doing great, but they need our help as well, okay? So what I'd love to do as I end the presentation is offer a challenge to this audience. As a professional, look at your organization and see, do you have a community outreach initiative that focuses on a STEAM program, okay? As a parent, I know we've got our soccer moms, our coach dads, soccer mom, STEAM mom, right? Go out there and help support a robotics team or a coding program or a mathlete, okay? As a person, if you have an opportunity that one time a year you're feeling like you want to do something altruistic, how about coach, mentor? It's not just about sponsoring and funding, but it helps, right? These kids also need to see it so they can become it. You are fostering the future leaders of tomorrow, your future employers, and you can do it through STEAM education. So how many of you are up to that challenge? Okay? I hope I have at least educated you today on what STEAM is so you can continue to make STEAM mainstream. Thank you.
Let's give Taylor Walsh a big hand of applause tonight because he's doing a great job. You know, I'm Sean Davis, and tonight's discussion is not going to be motivational, it's going to be how-to. So I want to see a quick show of hands. How many people out there do some sort of sport, whether it's cycling or it's
swapping out mics for me. Thank you. Or it's running, or something you do that means a lot to you, that takes a lot of effort. Quick show of hands. How many people do that? How many people also have that little voice in their head going, stop, it's too hard, quit, turn around. Okay, so this one's kind of for a lot of you. How many people also are kind of going to the gym and you're kind of like, lacking some effort there, right? So it happens to me all the time. So here's the thing. In my sophomore year, I weighed 130 pounds. My senior year in high school, weighed 199, 200, something like that, all through the gym. I actually got 6th place in Teenage Mr. Arkansas. Later on, when I was cycling 6 hours, actually 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, it took a lot of effort. And I ended up winning, I think, eight races and a series championship. So now, my wife and I are doing climbing. If you can't tell, we're up actually about 4,000, was it 4,000 feet, something like that? Believe me, that voice in your head goes, you are too high, stop, turn around. Because you've got little tiny handholds, and your brain's gonna sit there and go, you can't do that. So this guy, this son of a bitch right here in my head, all my life, telling me I can't do something, it's too hard, slow down, stop. This thing says, you know, just stop, just slow down. Nobody's gonna question you if you just stop and take a break. Fortunately, early on in my athletic career, so to speak, I met the gentleman that you just saw that wrote this book called Peak Performance. That's actually the one that I've had most of my life. It's written by Charles Garfield, and he wrote about his experiences with Soviet athletes doing lifts way beyond what anybody could ever expect out of them. They did it through mental training. And you can't brute force that voice in your head into submission. It will win every single time because it knows your strengths, it knows your weaknesses, and it will go after those weaknesses, and it will beat you at your weakest. So, a lot of you know me. You know it's kind of hard for me to calm down, right? Yeah. Well, I have to, and it's through visualization and relaxation that I'm able to kind of exceed what even I think I can do, which my wife will attest to is kind of crazy. So, what he said was, you need to get in your head things that matter most to you. When you're down, what is it? Your kids, maybe twins. What motivates you? What drives you? Then take your goals, write them down, make them concrete, make sure that you've got a plan together to reach your goals and reach what you want to do. So from there, you need to take some time, set aside 20 or 30 minutes every day, go out where nobody's going to bother you, where you can relax, you can calm down, center yourself, get into a deep state of relaxation. Your entire body's going to start to tingle, right? So as that happens, when you get out and you start to get in this relaxation, pick a spot on the ceiling and just feel yourself starting to relax. For me, what I visualize is ropes on ships starting to relax and calm down. And I'm able to get myself in a state where I can focus on my training sessions, right? So what you need to do is take that level of intensity, internalize it. It's going to be brutal, it's going to be harsh, but what you want to do is take that level of intensity up here so that when you actually go through training, you're not even close to it. So your brain is going to break before your body does. That's me this morning, before coffee, doing squats, right? It's going to be harsh, but you have to make it intense, and you have to recurringly train your brain and train your body to relax and be able to visualize the most intense workouts you've ever done, right? Do it repeatedly, do it intensely. Whether it's running, you can feel your heart coming out of your chest, sweat pouring off of you, your body about to break, but keep going. And the final step to this is you really need to let go and feel the training kind of flow through you. If you think this guy sits there and goes through every single move that he's going to do, as he's doing it, he lets go and he lets his training take over. And that's how you get peak performances, and that's how you exceed any possible limitation that you may think you have. So thank you very much. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Thanks to Taylor. Thanks to everybody that volunteered tonight. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
I ran a Google search for why are millennials so... It auto-filled the queries, so I could just hit go. Why are millennials so stupid? Why are millennials so rude? Why are millennials so selfish? Why are millennials so obsessed with food? Well, there you have it, the millennial problem. So clear and well-defined. Where's lazy and entitled? I guess they're between the lines. You see, they showed up from 1980 to the year 2004, give or take a few, depending on your source. So I'm an early millennial. They don't look like me. I'm generation something else. Generation we. I'm just like most Americans. Intelligent and wise, humble, polite, thoughtful, kind. I don't take pictures of my food. That's not what food is for. I don't take pictures of myself. That's what strangers are there for. I'll take a tripod over a selfie stick. My iPod works with a wheel that clicks. I am not like them. Like pushing my lifeboat away from a full ship I believe to be sinking is some kind of moral victory? Like turning around to face the crowd somehow makes me better than the audience? Like a man can secede from a statistic he was born into? No. I guess I am a millennial. That explains the hipster mustache. But if I want to understand a generation, there's some questions I must ask. Why are millennials so disloyal? They hop from job to job. Maybe their dad worked 18 years for a company that called him 5 hours away to a surprise corporate mugging where they took his job, his title, his car, his pension, his hopes, his dreams in the name of corporate finance. Or maybe that's just me. Why are millennials so entitled? They think they own the place. Maybe they want to take charge because they're dying to make a difference. Because they want to take the world where it hasn't been before it falls apart. Want to stand up for who they are before they become who they aren't. Not because they deserve it, but because it's a challenge they were born to take on. Not because they don't care how things were back in the day, but because it's irrelevant to forward progress. But why can't millennials put down the damn phone? 50 years ago, the entire world didn't have access to the computing power I now hold in the palm of my hand, or the ability to reach 1 billion people with a tap, or all the books and all the publications and all the music and all the information. So for any time any of us growing up was told to do something productive or be more social, maybe it's about time we asked why we're still calling this a phone. How will millennials ever recover from a lifetime of meaningless trophies? Maybe we knew all along that everyone can't win, that we're not special just because a sticker said we are, that a box full of ribbons and plaques for participants and runners-up and third-string bench-riding nobodies isn't worth the cardboard it's rotting away in. I come to you today not as just a millennial, but as the co-founder of a company where 17 of them work. So when I sit down with my 16 millennial co-workers, and I know in my soul that you won't find a team as dedicated to each other, as matched in their focus, as passionate, as hungry. When I fall on my 16 millennial co-workers, and they don't just catch me, they hold me up higher than I've ever stood before. And when I stand in defense of my 16 millennial co-workers, the only question I can't answer for you is how anyone doubts this generation, backed into a corner by an economy decimated before our time, born into worldwide war, in a world choking on its own exhaust. We've already moved mountains, crushed boundaries, and transformed society, and we're barely 35. So here's another Google search. Why are millennials so hopeful in the face of sure defeat? Why are millennials so giving when we can barely afford to eat? Why are millennials so gracious, so caring, and so kind when they are the most hated generation in, well, at least a generation?
So I want to ask you all a question tonight. How have you been manipulated today? Since I'm so nice, I'm going to help you out with the answer. We're manipulated all the time, every day, in virtually every way, through every medium. And advertising tries to convert your needs into very specific wants, so you buy products. But what happens when the goal is to influence a cause, perhaps in a good way, perhaps in a bad way? Then we cross over to propaganda. Over the years, propaganda has had very negative connotations, but the initial definition of the word has been used very neutrally. It just means to spread information. The meaning hasn't changed, but since World War II and on, there have been some very negative, for obvious reasons, there's been negative stigma around it, and it's only gotten worse. And that brings me to what I really want to talk about tonight, which is political propaganda. Political propaganda played a very integral role in my own life. I know. You're going to see a lot of this. But political propaganda has played a very integral role in my life, and that is because I was born in 1992 in Bosnia. And for those of you that don't know, former Yugoslavia fell apart in 1991. And the power vacuum that was left was quickly filled by Serbian nationalists who had control and state-sanctioned media, and the sole purpose was to turn Orthodox Serbs against Catholic Croats and Bosnian Muslims. And a genocide took place during that time, up until 1995. I am one of those Bosnian Muslims that survived, and so did my family, thankfully. My dad was only shot once, and that was in the butt. And the reason I found out was because I stumbled upon x-rays, and I was like, a butt. Yeah. So this is an example of what led up to that genocide. So in 2001, my family and I immigrated to Tampa. And my first memory of Tampa was getting off the plane, taking in a big air of just, it was like walking into a sauna when I got off the plane. So I collapsed, and it was terrible. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to breathe. It was over pretty quickly. But so in 2001, this was in July, we came over and settled in as refugees. And in September of 2001, the 9/11 attacks happened. Very unfortunate incident, but I'm speaking in hindsight, because at the time I didn't even speak English, so I had no idea what happened. I was in school, the teachers came in, we were watching TV, and I was very confused. It wasn't until years later that it dawned on me what was going on at the time. So with all the Muslim friends I had, they were taken out of schools, mosques were shut down, and there was a lot of fear-mongering going on. And what happened to me? Well, nothing. I am a white girl from Europe, and people would always say, you know, you're an immigrant, you did the right thing, you were saved. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, I'm just sick of this shit. Aren't you? Yeah. Yeah. We see this all the time, and especially today. And I could tell you about the techniques used with propaganda, stereotyping, name-calling, virtue words, like, is clean coal really clean? What do you think? Were the Stoneman Douglas school shooting survivors really crisis actors? What do you think? So there's all of that kind of stuff going on. But somebody gave me a really good piece of advice, and it was, you can't reason someone out of a situation that they never reasoned themselves into in the first place. And what I really want to say is that we can't forget the human element at the end of the day. The very, very goal of combating propaganda and what it can lead to is to remember the people behind it. I may not look like your stereotypical Muslim, but every time one is attacked in some way, it really hurts me. And what I really want to say to you at the end of the day is, please, please, please don't forget to vote. I think that's the reason that I went after the voting advocates that went before me. So after all that, I just want to say that propaganda can't always be bad, right? Anybody know Sarah McLachlan and the In the Arms of the Angel videos? Yeah. I donate every time. I know, it can be good. But political propaganda these days has been used for some very negative, in very negative ways. And this is something that we definitely need to be aware of. So follow me on Twitter. It's Amina Stadl. I know it's really pretentious, but thank you for having me. And please, don't forget to vote.
Technological singularity is a hypothesis that says that technology will advance to the point where it'll be able to improve itself. And when that happens, it'll trigger a runaway effect that will have an unimaginable impact on humanity. Tonight I have 5 minutes to talk about technological singularity. And while 5 minutes doesn't seem like a lot of time, if the singularity happened the way that a lot of people think that it could, 5 minutes could be enough time to see more than 5,000 years of technological change. So if you haven't heard about the singularity before, you might think that this is probably some new idea, and actually it's been around since the 1950s. And most of the people that think that it could happen believe that it would likely be sparked by the invention of human-level artificial intelligence. And the thinking is also that human-level artificial intelligence is just a matter of time. And that time is likely going to happen sooner than we think because of something called the law of accelerating returns. The law of accelerating returns says that not only is our technology getting better, it's getting better faster. And so the way that that works is every time we have a technological breakthrough, that technological breakthrough makes it easier for us and faster for us to get to the next technological breakthrough. So something that today might take us decades to achieve with the technology that we have right now, in a year from now, 2 years from now, that same thing might take weeks, months, or even days. And if one of those breakthroughs is the invention of human-level artificial intelligence, that will change everything. Because at that point, our technology will be able to improve itself. And that will speed things up like we can't imagine. And pretty soon, human-level artificial intelligence would become superintelligence, and superintelligence would trigger an intelligence explosion. And that is the singularity hypothesis in a nutshell. But let me illustrate it a different way. So imagine that you go for a walk and you double your speed every minute. Say you start out walking at 2 miles an hour, and after the first minute, you're walking 4 miles an hour, and a minute later, you're walking 8 miles an hour, and so on. After 5 minutes, you'd be going 64 miles an hour. But after 10 minutes, you'd be going almost 3 times the speed of sound. Now, imagine the same thing, but in addition to doubling your speed, imagine that you cut the doubling interval in half. So for the first minute, you're going 2 miles an hour. For the next 30 seconds, you're going 4 miles an hour. For the next 15 seconds, you're going 8 miles an hour, and so on. Pretty soon, your doubling interval becomes fractions of a nanosecond, and the distance that you're traveling is seemingly infinite. This is the idea behind how the singularity could happen and how, hypothetically, we could see thousands of years of technological advancements in just a matter of minutes. And with all the buzz about artificial intelligence today, there's a lot of people wondering if technological singularity could actually happen and asking the question, is human-level artificial intelligence something that we're close to? And this was a question that was asked to experts at a Singularity Summit a few years back. And as you might guess, the predictions were all over the map, but the median prediction was that we'd see human-level artificial intelligence by 2040, a little more than 2 decades from now. But not everybody, not every expert, believes that human-level artificial intelligence is right around the corner. For every scientist, academic, and technologist that's saying human-level artificial intelligence is going to be years from now or decades from now, there's another one saying that it will probably never happen, at least not in our lifetime. And the primary counter-argument is a variation of an idea that's usually referred to as the complexity break. And the complexity break says that when you have a really complex problem, the deeper you get into the problem, the harder the problem is to solve. And putting it mildly, figuring out how to create human-level artificial intelligence is a pretty complex problem. So you might get into the problem and think that you're making a lot of progress and close to figuring it out when actually you've barely begun. Or you might have 80% of the problem solved and realize that 80% of the problem takes 1% of the time that 100% of the problem, or solving 80% of the problem only takes 1% of the time that would be required to solve 100% of the problem. And so, thank you, time. Okay.
So everybody help me out. By a show of hands, tell me if you think you were a pretty smart kid growing up. Yeah? All right, some of y'all, great. Well, not me, not at all, actually. You see, I struggled with so many concepts while my siblings were striving and doing wonderful things. They hardly had to apply themselves. I struggled. I had a big issue in school growing up. And I remember I had one instructor, one teacher in elementary school. She thought she saw something bright in me of potential. And she told me to take a test to see if I'll pass the grade. So I took the test, failed miserably, and she said that I was a disappointment and an embarrassment. See, I struggled with dyslexic tendencies growing up, and everything was very difficult for me to grasp onto. But if you fast forward, I actually evolved into a gifted student. I went into the International Baccalaureate School of Programs, got a master's degree, became a professor of business, a training consultant. But how did that happen? How did that happen? One, the grace of God, better teachers along the way, a wonderful mother, and MacGyver. Yeah! Woo! MacGyver was that dude. He was creative, innovative, and he was able to adapt any situation to be able to succeed. And I learned how to become an adaptive learner, to take my limited resources and really become a person who was succeeding in that. Many organizations get frustrated with their talent because they feel like they train them, but the people aren't really being productive. And that's at any academic all the way to corporate settings. However, are those organizations really adapting the material for their learners is what I would ask. Passages USA is a program that is now enabling adults with disabilities to go to college for the first time because they're adapting the learning to those students, even students with Down syndrome. Mr. Mooney is a high school instructor who brought in Kendrick Lamar and brought in all of these musicians and things like that to be able to teach history and English to their students, such as Miss Valencia as well. Miss Valencia Clay is doing that. She just published her students for the first time. Professor Michelle Clifton is a professor of liberal arts in Chicago, and she's teaching inmates liberal arts education that didn't even have a GED to begin with. Again, adapting content to meet the learner's needs. I teach a program called Emerging Leaders. It's based out of Boston, and I teach here in Tampa to CEOs. They're curriculum that normally they would teach at a master's degree level, and we adapt the content and train it to CEOs who don't have that level of education, and they become strategic and wonderful. Yeah, thanks. See, learning doesn't have to be stale. It shouldn't be standardized. It shouldn't be one thing that everybody clicks in a boring training and gets through. It should be adaptive to the learner. And that's something that I like to teach corporations that I go into and academic settings as well, that you can actually make learning fun, engaging, collaborative, and it should create the productive results that your organization is wanting after all, right? You agree? I actually taught a course in college. It was an economics course, super boring. But I got my adult learners to be able to get a simulation of an ice cream shop. They competed and they started learning and thriving in concepts of scarcity, supply and demand, all these formulas. I also taught a course in Microsoft Office, again, Access, databases, Excel, you name it, all those crazy concepts for some people. But again, adapting the learning, being able to create a startup simulation where they were able to present a business proposal at the end. And corporations, again, no matter what the training is, and no matter how standardized it has to be or how unique it has to be to the organization, you can actually create adaptive learning at any level to create the results that you want to see in business. We assume that everybody learns the same way, that if we give everyone the same training material, the same boring curriculum, the same things, that everyone should come up with productive results, but that's not the case. We really have to start understanding how the brain works and how people learn to set people up for success. I like learning analytics, data analytics, to be able to understand where somebody is currently, where's their area of struggle, where are they proficient, and then start to kind of connect those dots and create a productive learning plan. We have students all over the world with STEM programs. They're learning coding, analytics, all types of complicated subjects because we're starting to adapt curriculum and be able to enable learners. So imagine the possibilities of what can happen at any level between all the way from young students to adult learners all around the world when we bridge the gap with learning analytics between learning efforts and productivity. And that's what I think is definitely possible. Thank you so much for listening to me today.
Is this thing on? I still need a crutch, even though I've done this many times, so I'm going to have to talk with this. My name's Kyle Matthews, and I lead a national nonprofit called Beat and Be. We fight childhood cancer by funding clinical trials. You may have known us as Because of Ezra, but we recently changed our name when we merged with 4 other nonprofits across the country doing similar work. For the past 7 years, we've been trying to change what a diagnosis of neuroblastoma means for a family. Historically, it's only had a 50 or 60% cure rate. We've assisted in the growth of, and we helped to fund, a national consortium of hospitals, 25 strong, called the NMTRC. And last year, we launched a new trial called PEDS Plan, which is significant because it's the first time that genomics or precision medicine is being done in newly diagnosed childhood cancer patients. This is a shift in the way that we treat cancer. You see, cancer works because a group of cells are mutated and they keep duplicating. So you have a tumor that keeps growing when it shouldn't. And genomics in cancer looks at what's causing those mutations, with a goal being to treat with a drug that only knocks out the cancer cells, nothing else. So right now we have chemo, and that doesn't work. It's a blanket attack of all the cells in your body, and we just hope that it kills the cancer faster than anything else in your body. But a lot of side effects that you see of cancer treatment are actually from the chemo, not from the cancer. In 2003, the Human Genome Project completed, and by 2010, that was starting to become clinically relevant. So we started a trial to decide, could we take that genomic data that we get from a kid's tumor and actually get treatment decisions off that information? Well, it looked like we could, so we opened a new trial to actually treat kids with the information we were getting. But it was a shallow look at genomic data. It was actually taking way too long for us to do the test just because of the sheer computing power that was necessary. So we needed faster computers. So we partnered with Dell to do that. That last couple of slides was actually 3 years of research. But with this partnership with Dell now, we could take a deeper look. Even though we weren't really getting the highest level yet, we could take a sample of a kid's tumor, run it through some software, get treatment decisions, and then actually start treating that kid based on the information we were getting. But we really needed the deepest look at genomic data. And it just took too long when we started. It took 2 full months to do the full test. And when you've got 13 months of treatment, that's too long. So with the faster computers that Dell had put in there, we actually got that down from 2 months to 2 weeks. And then TGen, a company out in Arizona, also got a new certification that let us use some of their scans. So we started a new trial, now finally using the deepest look at genomics. This is a big deal. And we could use a model to choose already FDA-approved drugs to treat a kid based on the information from that kid's specific tumor. So maybe we're treating them with an Alzheimer's drug instead of a cancer drug, and their tumor's shrinking. All these trials were kids who had either relapsed or their cancer had never gone away. But we were really trying to treat newly diagnosed patients, and PEDS Plan, that trial I told you about, is actually the first one doing that. You may have heard of the Precision Medicine Initiative, which Obama and Vice President Biden are talking a lot. It's pushing forward this type of research, and the NMTRC and B&B as a funder were the first ones to do this in childhood cancer. We've been doing it for 6 years. We've really only been able to do that because we have an incredible group. We have 25 hospitals across the country. We have a waiting list of new ones. Like I said, Dell and TGen and a lot of other advocates and nonprofits are helping us. And we are getting better. Dell's Health Cloud is getting faster. The sequencing is getting more advanced. And we're starting to understand, like I said, those mutations in the cancer cells, what they mean. All of this leads to better understanding in the clinic of what to do with that data. But we're not fast enough. This is my son, Ezra. He was diagnosed with neuroblastoma when he was a year old, and shortly after his 2nd birthday, he relapsed. There's no cure for relapsed neuroblastoma. In November of 2010, my son died. None of these were even available at that time. This is Lily Mae, another kid who has neuroblastoma. And for 2 years, she came over to Grand Rapids, Michigan from Ireland to be on another trial we're funding. She's doing great. This month, we found out she's 2.5 years cancer-free. I show you these pictures to tell you that, yeah, it's great. I show you these pictures to tell you that it's exciting that we're doing this research and we are seeing really big advances, but at the end of all of those treatments is a kid. These are families that I cry with, I share meals with them, and these are big, huge problems that we are moving the needle on, but the stakes are too high. I started all this because of my son, because of Ezra. And it's become because of so many other kids. I miss my kid, but I know that we get to choose what we do with tragedy. And I hope through this work, less and less families will share this pain. If you want to know more, you can look us up on beatnb.org. Again, my name is Kyle Matthews. Thanks.
I know that's the thing. So my talk is called Influencer Marketing, the Good, the Bad, and dun dun dun, the ugly. So all I want you guys to get out of this by the end of the talk is a deep dive within yourself to figure out your true worth that you bring to the world. This ambitious young lady right here you see behind me, self-made billionaire, beat out Mark Zuckerberg. At 21, she built an e-commerce empire around cosmetics. Okay, 136 million people follow her. Okay, how did she build this empire? Everybody says her mom helped, her sisters helped. I think that's kind of BS because their net worth is nowhere near $1 billion. So, what does she do? Influencer marketing. Okay, brands from startup to corporate pay her, literally throw money at her to promote their products. How much do you guys think she gets paid per post? 5 grand, 10 grand, 50 grand? Nope. $250,000 to $500,000 per post. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. Guys, this is influencer marketing done right at its most prime level, okay? Every single one of you guys are influencers and can take a brand to their next level, okay? You don't need to have all these followers. You don't need all that. As long as you have a sphere of influence, you can monetize that audience. So, now we go into the bad. This is Jewel. You might have seen this pretty little product in the hands of every single millennial and like Gen Zer. Have you guys seen it? Can I get a raise of hands? All right. So, how did this company go from a nobody to $1 billion company within like 2 years? And they're considered a health tech product. Just want to throw that one out there. Guys, they have a like huge lawsuit against them because of their product. So what they did was they hosted a launch party in New York. They brought out all of the like top personalities in YouTube, top personalities on Instagram, and they had the most Instagrammable party ever. It was awesome. I wish I got invited. But, so like all these people that like young people look up to have made cigarettes cool again. Actually, it's not cigarettes, right? Because it's vaping. But essentially, they're like, everybody wants to be a Juul influencer. Horrible, horrible, horrible thing. So, on a next note, getting out of that depressing view of what our society has turned into, we're gonna go into what I like to call the biggest disaster of 2018. Almost took up Fyre Fest as a disaster, but Fyre Fest was a collective of influencers. This event was put on by one influencer, Tana. Has anybody heard of TanaCon? That guy, you, yeah. So it was this massive thing. It was a massive launch. 5,000 tickets sold at $150 a pop. These kids thought they were going to go to this event in LA and they were going to see YouTubers that they've looked up to their whole lives, right? But there was just one thing missing: logistics and planning. It was a disaster, guys. Like, I'm not even joking. Kids were taken out of there literally in, like, by ambulances because they were dehydrated. They didn't have any type of support to handle all these people. The staff had said that the Marriott said it was okay. Ended up being like 20,000 people showed up without tickets. It was a disaster. It was considered the biggest scam of 2018 for YouTube, for YouTubers and like the YouTube creative community. It was really, really sad. So, speaking on this, I want to talk about ethics and the importance You know, like Stan Lee once said, with great power comes great responsibility. If you have the attention of people and you want to monetize that audience, please do the research on the products that you're pushing on them. Like, look into that company's history. Are they legit? Are they a Ponzi scheme? Are they just gonna run away with everybody's money? Like, it's your moral obligation to do that research before you start pushing product, because everybody will take your word more serious than anybody else. So in this world of dark, be the light and lead by example. Go follow me and my puppy on Instagram, trying to get famous. Let's go.
Forgive me, I'm a millennial. Just want to take a picture. Okay, my name is Michael O'Rourke. I am a blockchain investor, entrepreneur, and developer. And real quick, by show of hands, how many people here own some sort of cryptocurrency? Okay, it's like 10%, 20%? Awesome. Well, that's great. Hopefully more after this, more of you might have some. So my purpose for this is to inspire and inform. This is a very deep topic, and I'm going to be glossing over a lot of things. Really what I hope is that by the end of this, you'll have some questions and you'll be curious about it. So I can't talk about this without you understanding the context in which this came out of. It was 2008, after the recession. The government had just bailed out the banks, and a lot of us realized the state of our financial system at that time. And out of that time came the first blockchain. Now, what is a block? A block is just a record of transactions. This block is a record of Alice sending money to Bob. Now, these blocks can actually hold thousands of transactions each. A blockchain is just a history of every block in chronological order by time. Blockchains are special because they are public and open source. You can look up every transaction that has ever happened in a blockchain, and these transactions are impossible to change or delete. Blockchains are also decentralized. So this means that tens of thousands of computers around the world are running copies of these blockchains. And the only way that you could actually shut off one of these blockchains is to turn off the internet at the same time around the world. Blockchains remove the need for a middleman to hold or send money. All you need is the address of the person you're sending money to, and they can receive it. So what this means is that you actually own your own money. You're responsible for the keys yourself. There are stories of people looking for millions of dollars worth of lost Bitcoin in landfills because they lost the keys of their wallets. So Bitcoin is the first application on top of the first blockchain. Bitcoin enables peer-to-peer transactions to anyone around the world without knowing who they are, where they're from, or without having to trust anyone like Visa or PayPal. Ethereum is a second completely separate blockchain. Now, Ethereum enables the peer-to-peer transactions, but have one important addition. They have these things called smart contracts. And these smart contracts sit on the blockchain just like these transactions do, except these smart contracts can also hold money. And not only can they hold money, but these smart contracts have code that executes based on certain parameters being met. So that means that you can literally program money. That's never been able to have been done before. And this is enabling new types of businesses and jobs that have never been able to, that no one has ever seen before. So what does this mean? Like, what kind of businesses are being built today that are decentralized, that are immutable, that can't ever be changed, and that people are receiving cryptocurrency for? Well, some of my favorites are decentralized storage. So imagine being able to rent out a piece of your hard drive and receive in return some sort of cryptocurrency. Not only that, but these options have the potential to be up to 100 times cheaper than current services like Dropbox offer. There's also decentralized identity. We've all heard of the hacks that happen. We lose our passwords, or we get our passwords and our emails stolen. With the blockchain, this can be completely avoided because you actually own the keys to your identity and they're not sitting on some unsecure server somewhere. Not only that, imagine having one password for the entire internet. Golem is building a decentralized supercomputer that anyone around the world can access. If I'm a researcher and I need some expensive computation for some scientific research, I can access this network and be able to do computation for machine learning and big data or anything else. So what does this mean for the future of business? What kinds of new paradigms is this bringing up into the world? Well, right now, the biggest companies in the world are built on top of the internet. That includes Google, that includes Facebook, that includes Amazon, eBay. All of those companies are built on top of the internet. Blockchain flips that upside down, and it's like you being able to own a piece of the internet. If you could own a piece of the internet today, how much would that be worth? This is what the blockchain is actually enabling today. Imagine being at Harvard when you're first using Facebook, and you actually receive some sort of token in return. You could choose to keep it, you could choose to sell it, or you could choose to use it in their own network. That's what's happening. So down the road, what kinds of things are super interesting? I think supply chain is going to be amazing for blockchains, to be able to know that the avocado, again, I'm a millennial, the avocado down the that I bought, I can know exactly where it came from and where, and from the second I got it from my hand. Thank you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me.
My name is Dr. Farhan Malik. At the end of my speech, your job is to commit to just one action to help you overcome something you probably didn't even know you had: unconscious bias. A question I commonly get is, where am I from? And my favorite response is, New Jersey. But the information the person is actually seeking is this. This is my ancestry data, and as you can see, I'm 96.9% South Asian. But I'm not only Pakistani, I'm also African, Korean, and Japanese. You see, people often rely on the unconscious parts of their brains to make judgments about me, and that's totally expected. Unconscious bias evolved to help the human species survive. Let's say one day one of our cave-dwelling ancestors sets out walking across a plain and spots a creature approaching. Now, instead of jumping to conclusions, he wants to bust his biases. Well, it's thick and furry, so it's not an iguana. It's bigger than a bird, but smaller than an elephant. It's on the ground and not in the water, so it's not a fish. And then, this would likely be the result of our ancestors' bias-free day, being eaten by a lion. You see, without the brain's ability to subconsciously process thousands of pieces of information in an instant, our ancestors would have ended up as food. The same ability now gets us through the day without having to slowly process every decision we make. 99.99996% of the input your brain receives is processed unconsciously. Everyone is biased. It's important not to be ashamed of this basic fact. But it's also important to recognize that unconscious bias hinders diversity and, more worrisome, puts lives in danger. Serena Williams, the famous tennis player, just finished having a C-section when she felt short of breath. She told her nurse, who said that her pain medicine was probably just making her confused. After Serena insisted, the medical team finally ordered a CT scan, which revealed blood clots in her lungs. Fortunately, she survived this, but not without complications. Unfortunately, this is an all too common occurrence in the United States. Maternal mortality is steadily rising in the US. The only other country with a rising rate is Serbia. But the most frightening statistic is that 42.8% of these deaths that are preventable occur in black women. Put another way, black mothers are 3 to 4 times more likely to die than white mothers. Why is this? Well, there are many factors that play a role, but unconscious bias has something to do with it. Healthcare workers may not be taking black women's complaints as seriously as they should be. There's a perception that black women tolerate pain differently because of a higher muscle mass. Simply put, there's a fine line between clinical intuition and unconscious bias. So, how do we go about unbiasing ourselves? Start by structuring your interactions. At the next party you're at, I want you to ask the same 3 questions to the first 5 people you talk to, and find that you'll open yourself up to people and experiences. Next, evaluate your inner circle. Go home and in one column, jot down the top 10 people you trust outside of your spouse and family, and categorize them by age, race, gender, sexuality, disability, education. If you're finding a lot of homogeneity in that group, perhaps unconscious bias is hindering you. Last, speak up. Make it okay to call out unconscious bias. This is not an HR work issue. This is about all decision making, and we are all decision makers. If my friends and family are being explicitly biased, you better be sure I'm going to call them out on it. But if they're being unconsciously biased, I'm going to call them out on it too. Make it okay to call out unconscious bias. So, after you leave this theater tonight, I challenge you to commit to just one of these actions. Find that by unbiasing ourselves, we have the ability to elevate ourselves above our caveman ancestors. If there are any questions I can answer, please feel free to reach out to me. I sincerely thank you.
But there's a monster out there. There's a huge monster, and it's among us, and some of you might be looking at it right now. And that monster is social media. And tonight I'm going to tell you a story about how that monster made me lose my focus on what was important to me, my number one. And so I'm going to take you way back just to frame my story, way back. And communities used to be very, very small. And because they were so small, people's talents felt unique. And you fast forward to the 80s, that's when I joined the party, and our communities were still very, very small. We learned things from real, live people that we could talk to and touch and interact with. And we had influences, but I think they were very common, and we all understood that these things were make-believe. Because these guys were 30 years old, and they were playing high schoolers. None of us were buying it. They looked like my parents. And so we grew up, and we followed the path that we had learned from the people that were around us. And I did the things that I had set out to do, and I checked all those boxes. And I was happy. I was like, crushing it, done. And then this happened. So where you see this huge mountain start, that was actually the beginning of my adult life. So I went from being really happy and exposed to certain things to suddenly getting a fire hose of everybody else's life and their experiences. And when it first started, social media was real friendly. It was Tom, and it was fun. And it didn't affect the way that we lived our lives at all. It was just, none of us even knew how to use it. And we had things like digital cameras and stuff where we started to, judge our photos, and we're like, oh, this is great, no CVS 1 hour photo. And then when it really took off, making connections, it was exciting. Facebook was fun. I moved a lot, so I got to see friends that I hadn't seen in years, and I was pumped. And then I started seeing all of their friends and their friends' friends and complete strangers, and all these people that were doing all these really cool things. I mean, look at the abs. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I gotta start doing all this stuff. And so I started chasing it. I started chasing this perfection and losing sight of what I was really trying to do. And my brain did this thing where it took everybody's individual talents and it put it into this super person. And then it told me that everybody is really good at all of this stuff, and you're not. And you need to figure out how to make it happen. And I felt like a failure, and I kept chasing it. And suddenly my husband and I were just both incredibly overwhelmed. We were not really getting along as well as we had been. I was exhausted. I was trying to make homemade everything. I was waking up at 4:30 to do CrossFit. I sucked at CrossFit. It was horrible. We were trying to make our kids look perfect, and they don't want to look like anything I tell them to do. And we just were unhappy. And we said, we're playing a game that we aren't going to win, that we don't want to win, and we need to do something about it. So it didn't happen overnight, but we came up with a plan. And we said, okay, we're going to put all the stuff out on the table that we care about, and we need to pick a very, very small list of things we want to do, like maybe 3 things. And so I laid it all out. I was like, okay, here's all my stuff. And I took all the cool stuff, and I pushed it all the way over here, and then I had my little list of things. And it was my health. I was like, yeah, I got to live. My family. You know, I'm a mom, I kind of signed up for that. And then my career, because we've got to pay for all the things that I need to do. And so I had my 3 goals, and I said, okay, these are simple, and I'm not doing anything cool anymore. And so I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be an awesome parent. I'm going to be a fantastic marketer, and I'm going to be super healthy. And I felt like a failure again. And then we said, okay, we need to work really hard at one thing. And so we each picked our number 1. And, you know, it rotates. So I picked, it was my career at the time. I was traveling all the time for work, and I was like, this is important. I need to make this happen. And Jesse said, okay, I got the kids. And I was like, cool. We're going to do this together. And so we talked about it, and we communicated, and we said, we're going to support each other. And, you know, I'm still not doing all the things that I wanted to do. It's a balancing act. I still am the one that falls on my face when I do the crow pose at yoga. But I have my support system. They have custom t-shirts on. They made foam fingers for me tonight. So, you know, I feel like I'm winning at something, and I'm happy. And if I can encourage you guys to do anything when you walk out of this room tonight, I'd say, you know, embrace all these things that entertain you. Social media, it's not evil. But prioritize the things that bring you joy. And I want you to shut out all the stuff that makes you not feel good enough and find your number 1. And that's my time. Thank you.
So my name's Doug Pace, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've gone through over the last 2 years of my life. It's actually been pretty interesting. On March 14th of 2016, it's a day that some people say it's the day before the Ides of March. For me, it was kind of the start of the next few days of my life. I had 42 years old. I had just sold my company to my business partner. It was a pretty successful company. We had won U.S. Chamber Business of the Year, Tampa Chamber Business of the Year, been on the Inc. 5000 many years in a row. I was negotiating a role at a Fortune 100 company to be a C-level executive, and I was on top of the world. I thought it was the best. That was to be struck down because that evening I had a massive stroke. Massive stroke. I dissected my carotid and my vertebral arteries. So those are the 4 arteries that bring all the blood to your brain. And I collapsed in my bathroom in my home. The crazy thing was, going through a stroke is kind of interesting. It's kind of psychedelic in a sense. I can remember being on the ground in the bathroom, looking at my legs, going, man, this is really bad. I need to get up. I need to get up and tell my wife that I need to get to the hospital, but I couldn't move. My life was put on pause. I was evacuated to the hospital next to my house, and all I can remember being at that hospital is the doctor on the other side of the thing going, hey, this is really bad. We need to get this guy to Tampa General, get the helicopter on the roof. And I'm looking around going, man, who's in such bad shape? And it was me. So I got to Tampa General. I spent a week in neuro ICU. I spent a week asleep. I had great friends that visited me every day. This is actually a picture of me. This is the first picture of me after being through rehabilitation. What you can't tell that I'm going through right here, it's both of my kids, is everything that's going on. When you have a stroke, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like the shopping cart. Everything is hitting your senses and you can't focus. You can't control. You can't control the smells. You can't control the light. You just want to get out. And then when people are asking you to talk, it's like flipping through baseball cards. You know what you want to say, but you can't find the word. Hey, can you pass me that salt shaker? Man, it's an easy word, but you got to flip through those cards. So what happened? I had spent my whole career living on my intellect, building a consulting practice. What was I going to do? I made a little bit of money selling the company, but not enough to retire forever. I had 2 small kids. I was 42 years old. So I did what I could. I went out and I talked to all my friends. I spent 6 months meeting with my friends. But the crazy thing is I couldn't remember the conversations half the time. So I kept a little black book with me and I'd write down everything that we talked about. And I did some cool things. I actually demolished a house with one of them. It was really fun. The great thing is I actually give all my friends credit for my rehabilitation because of those experiences of talking with them so much, my brain remapped itself, and it remapped itself faster than anybody could imagine. And while I was healing my brain, I really got a chance to find out what was really important to me and who I was as a person. As you start to think about who you are, you think about who you want to be. Some people call it, being narcissistic or being self-centered. But once you start to figure out who you are and who you want to be, you can start to build your own values. I built 3 core values that I hold today. 1, have fun. Have fun in everything that you do. 2, be optimistic. If you don't have optimism, you have nothing. And 3, help others be successful. When I started doing this, everything started falling into place in my life. I built another company. I got clients faster than I ever wanted. And I got friends coming out of the woodwork saying, how can I help you? It was great. It changed my perspective, and I learned that perspective is a big thing. I was helping people. I was helping my friends. I wasn't working anymore, but I was making more money than I ever had. So if I leave you with one thing, I leave you with this. When you build your values and you think about what's important to you, you can really get a lot accomplished. And for me, it was about helping friends. And you can't ever have a better day than when you're helping your friend. Thank you. I'm Doug Pace.
My name's Tony Francisco, and I have 5 minutes to talk to you about my mistakes and talk to you about the best mistake that you're ever going to make in your life. Despite what you think, I've made a few mistakes. Some of them have happened in Las Vegas. Some of them have been involving alcohol, and some of them have resulted in me holding a blow-up doll. Here's a fun fact. I have run completely naked all the way down the strip in Las Vegas. There are pictures out there. There are, and that's a fact. What a mistake, right? But in retrospect, was that a mistake? Was that just bad judgment? Is that what a mistake is? Just bad judgment, maybe a little overconfidence, maybe a little too much alcohol, maybe just a slight miscalculation. When did you know that it was a mistake? There's actually a term for that. It's called an exploding noema. It's an explosion in your mind, that moment that you realize what is versus what you thought was. Where are my keys? Oh, shit, they're in my hands. Hey, have you seen my sunglasses? Ugh, they're on my head. Those are very, very small things that have happened to all of us. And the question is, when they happen, it hurts. There are some things that are very private, but they still hurt. Here's a fun fact. I was going in for an interview. It was a job of a lifetime. It was going to make all my dreams come true. I bought new shoes, new suit, new antiperspirant that I never tried. I spent more time focusing on the sweat dripping down my sides than the interview, and I didn't get the job. It was private. But sometimes when mistakes happen, they're public. And when they're public, they hurt. But have we ever considered maybe, just maybe, we're doing this to ourselves? Here's a great fact. Every single person in this room has mastered the art of self-sabotage. Why? Why are you doing that? Part of you is doing something amazing. Part of you is putting out fires, and the little subconscious part of you is setting fire to the damn fire truck right behind you. What would you be doing that for? It doesn't make any sense. There's a bicycle sharing program going on right now in China. It's amazing. They're going to help millions, if not billions of people. Mistakes are going to be made. There were mistakes made. In fact, there's a surplus right now of bicycles. Not thousands, not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of bicycles, piles of them as far as you can see. It's not a matter of if mistakes are made. They will be made. What did you do from that mistake? How did you make yourself stronger, smarter from that mistake, no matter how big the mistake was? Alexander Fleming was trying to fight bacteria that was hurting people. And one of the mistakes he made was mildew, mold, in the petri dish, killed the bacteria that he was trying to kill. Technically, that's a mistake. But it gave us penicillin. He made it an amazing event from a mistake. Can you learn from your mistakes? Absolutely. Can you learn from other people's mistakes? Absolutely. Kodak, who owned the picture industry, in 2012 filed for bankruptcy. In 2012, that same year, Instagram was purchased for $1 billion. That's someone else's mistake they didn't fix. We've all heard of Elon Musk, the automotive industry. They weren't addressing cars, electric-powered or battery-powered cars. Elon Musk came along and, well, we now have the Tesla. So I started off this conversation with a slide showing me an implied mistake in Las Vegas. It was actually my bachelor party. I ended up marrying an amazing woman, and she has to deal with all my mistakes. We make our mistakes together now. In fact, we had 2 mistakes. 2. They're about this tall. Is that bad? No. The mistakes made us stronger. And that's the part of this conversation that we all have to pay attention to. You, all of you, are a sum of your experiences. If you could go back in time and remove any one of those just painful mistakes, you would not be the person that you are today. All the fights that you've lost, the arguments that you've lost, all the sales that you didn't get, the relationships that didn't work out, they made you better. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up. You are who you are today because of those mistakes. And the next mistake, the best mistake, is right around the corner. And when it happens, embrace it. It's going to make you stronger. My name's Tony Francisco. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Matthews, and I work at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. I'm a simulationist, and a little bit of what I do is train clinicians on how to take care of children with dolls and mannequins and task trainers like this picture behind me, teaching clinicians how to insert very tiny, tiny catheters into very tiny little arteries and veins. We also do some 3D printing, which we're going to be hosting the Congenital Heart Surgery Conference in Orlando this summer, and we're printing a bunch of 3D hearts and working with surgeons to train them on repairing congenital defects in hearts. It's a lot of fun what I do in simulation, training clinicians. I love giving clinicians that opportunity to practice before they get out there and actually perform surgery on real children. I got my start as an orderly 31 years ago. I think I just dated myself. Cleaning ORs. I was the person who mopped the floors after the cases and set up the OR tables. What was really cool about that is I've been in healthcare for 31 years, and it's given me a lot of perspective. So back then, MRIs and MRAs are angiographies that we get with magnetic resonance imaging. They had just entered the stage. They had just received Medicare reimbursement in 1984. So because of that, they were really only in outpatient centers, and they were used very rarely for preoperative planning. So at that age, I remember this case I was watching, because I used to watch all the surgeries. I thought it was really cool to watch the surgeons cut and sew like artists. I was watching this case one day, and it was a vascular surgeon. He was amazing. He was in his late 60s, and in the middle of the case, he stopped and he said, "Oh my God." And the anesthesiologist looked over the drape, and he froze, and he was stunned. And the circulating nurse started running, and everyone started moving at 100 miles per hour. Everyone was moving so fast, and I really didn't understand what was going on. I only heard the word hemorrhage. And it was then that surgeon moved into lightning speed with 40 years of surgical experience. He started improvising, and he saved that patient's life. After the surgery, I heard them talking. I was very young, but I heard them talking about how if it had not been that surgeon in that room that day with that patient would not have survived. He was able to recount about 15 years ago where he had seen something very, very similar in another patient and knew how he had solved that problem with that patient before. So he had brought many, many years of deliberate practice in surgery plus the experience of that previous case and improvised instantly. Much like Sully Sullenberger did when he landed that plane on the Hudson with dual engine failure. This is how surgeons operated in 1987. Now that MRIs and MRAs are in surgery, in hospitals everywhere, we do that before surgery now as a matter of course of business. We get an MRI of someone before surgery, we scope it out two-dimensionally, and we see what's going on before cases, so we don't have very many surprises. But actually, the reality is many surgeons get into a case after having studied MRIs and CTs and ultrasounds and find surprises and still have complexity. So what I propose and what we've seen many heart surgeons experience is that when they print patients before surgery and actually hold the organs in their hands and look at them and plan the surgery and maybe even with a scalpel cut it and practice the surgery before they get in, the case goes a lot better. It's very intuitive, actually, right, to print a patient before you actually get into surgery. So what I hope to do and what my dream is to do the hard research and discovery that it's going to take to prove to Medicare and Medicaid that we should be reimbursed for it because it works to save lives. Just like MRI and MRAs did in 1987 and how they proved themselves over the last years, we need to do the same for 3D printers. We need to prove that we should print patients before we do surgery. And mostly the complex surgeries, not every single surgery should be printed, but those complex cases where tumors are wrapped around arteries or where you have things that are impinging on very important parts of the brain. So that's my big idea. And everyone's using a Twitter handle, so you can follow me on Twitter, 2123 Melissa P. So thank you.
Apparently this is the wrong title slide. Hopefully the other slides will be right. You stuck around till the end. That's great. Listen, I'll bet you've all been here before. You go out with a group of friends, conversation jumps from topic to topic, and at some point in time in the night, somebody says something which is 100% incorrect. And you know it because you got the facts and the data to back up what's right. So you decide to enlighten them and correct them. How does that go? Do they thank you? Are they grateful? Do they change their mind? Or do they double down? Give you some obscure reference for why they're right, also known as confirmation bias. And you sit there left wondering how somebody so stupid could be alive. Why does this happen? It happens because whenever facts and data conflict with how we feel our emotions, resistance is guaranteed. We resist because to accept new information, which is in conflict with how we feel, means we have to admit that we're wrong. And for most, to admit that they're wrong is pretty painful. Yeah. In fact, to admit that we're wrong is something very challenging. You'd think people would love it, but the reality is, the more you try to prove somebody that they're wrong with science and data, the more you actually enforce why they think they're right. It's called the backfire effect. We see it happen every day in pop culture, brand loyalty, religion, and especially politics. See, when we're proven wrong, when we're told you're wrong, what happens is it fires off the same neural networks in our mind as when we feel physical pain. This, combined with this new culture of not only sticks and stones breaking our bones, but also Facebook tweets that are disrespectful and mean tweets and every other weird social media attack, what happens is for most people, being told they're wrong can be as painful as having their hand shut in a car door. The only way that we can transition through this is to come up with a different meaning for what it means to be wrong. And I'll tell you, I'm real proud in the fact that I'm immune to the backfire effect. I actually like it when people tell me I'm wrong. I'm very open-minded. I'm very approachable. I stay pretty cool. Maybe I'm not 100% good at that. I'm only human, right? But I will tell you I have a different association to what it means to be wrong. And I'm going to share with you how that came to my life in hopes that maybe, just maybe, it'll change the way you associate what it means to be wrong as well. See, when I was 8 years old, my mom and my dad gave my brother and I each $100 to spend on whatever toys we wanted. And instead of us each spending our money on separate toys, we decided to pool our money together and buy a state-of-the-art gaming system. This was the year the Atari 2600 was released. That's right, baby. One joystick, one button, that's all you ever need. When we told my dad about our investment, he vetoed it right away. Why? He wasn't an idiot. He knew he'd be the one that have to buy all of the game cartridges. So he sat us down. He said, "We can't afford that. I'm sorry. You got to get something else." And like kids, we were disappointed, but we bounced back pretty quickly. But this is where the story gets really good. 3 days later, my dad shows up at the house with a brand new portable television set. Black and white screen, 3 inches in width, encased in a box twice the size of a briefcase. This thing was awesome. And without even thinking about it, as an 8-year-old kid, I looked over at my brother and I said, "Man, could you imagine playing Pac-Man on that tiny little screen?" I didn't think anything about it. But my dad did. He heard that and impacted him. And the next day, after coming home from playing outside for the whole day, it's something we used to do back then, we had an Atari 2600 in the house. Yeah. My dad sat me down and he said, "Son," he goes, "I owe you an apology." He said, "I told you we couldn't afford these video game cartridges, and then I went and bought this TV that's about the cost of 15 of those cartridges." The reality is I just didn't want to hear video games playing to the background of the house all the time, and that was wrong for me to do. Now, keep in mind, by the way, at 8 years old, to an 8-year-old son, his dad is his hero. And mine was no different. So I was able to link up and associate being wrong isn't something you should be embarrassed about or feel ashamed from or hurt from. But admitting that you're wrong can be heroic. Think about what happens when somebody says, "You know what, you were right, I was wrong." How do you feel about them? But even better yet, how does their world open up with a whole new set of possibilities when they're willing to accept that the data they've believed in may not be complete? And I encourage you, as you leave here tonight, to think about that the next time you have information which conflicts with what you've been told. And be willing to be your own hero and say, what if, just what if I'm wrong? Thank you very much. I'm Topher Morrison. Have a good night. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for being here.
All right, so I have been very, very lucky to probably attend over 100 meetups, conferences, events like tonight, and even ran some at this very awesome theater. And in that time, I think I've learned what makes an outstanding member of the community. And it's not a big, deep, dark secret. I'm not trying to sell you a book tonight. It's just a pattern of behavior that people seem to fall into. And I think it's vital for growing communities as well as humanity as a whole. And the basic principle is people just start learning something in their spare time or at work. They do something with that, write a report, a paper, create a project, and then they share it with other people. It's pretty straightforward. Learn, do, share. But why it's important is there was this question that came up on Reddit. If someone from the 1950s suddenly appeared in front of you right now, what's one thing that you could tell them that would just blow their mind about modern day life? You're probably coming up with some kind of questions right now. But the one that stood out in this particular thread said that I have a device in my pocket that holds all of the information known to humanity. And I use it to look at pictures of cats and argue with strangers. And it's golden, right? It's perfect. Because of course that's what we do. But there's more to it. We use this device for everything. It's almost an extension of our body these days. But we also use it to look at pictures of cats, or whatever you're into looking at pictures of. And we argue with strangers, right? And the fascinating thing about this was 2013. So Facebook, at that point, it's doubled in growth. And I'm sure I'm not alone in noticing that we don't just argue with strangers on the internet anymore. It's your friends, your family, your weird uncle on Facebook all the time who won't stop posting. So, and something happened in the past few years. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but something kind of escalated this a lot. And you can't go on Twitter or Facebook or anything without seeing an argument starting or full blown. And there's some really interesting science behind this. If you're interested in this stuff, I suggest Googling the attention economy. I'm going to dumb it down really quick, but basically, attention is the finite resource as we consume all this information. So your attention is very valuable. And I'm sure you want to use it really, really well. This 5 minutes, slightly questionable, but I'm going to give some ideas that maybe you can use in the next couple of days after the after party if you're feeling courageous. So first up, we've all Googled something. The answer wasn't there, but we figured it out. The next time that you do that, write it down. Put it on your blog, somebody else's blog. Get it on a question and answer site. Just get it back out there so that the next person gets that information. And if that's not interactive enough, or you want something with a little bit more social parts, I'm going to share some ideas from this awesome book called Reinventing Discovery. So it basically just goes over ways that humans are collectively pooling knowledge to advance science. This is Hani's Voorwerp, which translates to Hani's object. So it's off this site called Galaxy Zoo, where human beings look at pictures from space and identify anomalies. And they do it all night long as a hobby. And this was such a big find that they actually named it after her. Foldit is like Bejeweled for manipulating protein. And so basically you're like manipulating amino acids and making shapes out of them. And scientists use it to cure things like cancer. My favorite is Web Sleuths. On this, people go on there and they like make interactive Google Maps of crimes, or look at faces and identify like crime photos and then victims and like give answers to people's families. Then you can go all in. You can go really deep into something. And rest in peace, Michelle McNamara dove into this project and wrote a book, and the fame around it led to more notoriety for the case, and they solved a 30-year-old case. So these are just a few of the things that you can do. There's so much, right? You can do a few of the things that interest you. You can join things with lots and lots of other people. You can breathe. Oh, wow. So the general principle right now is just take those things that you're interested in, either do them by yourself, take some of that time that you have, that attention that you might be watching arguments, or maybe the guilty pleasure of enjoying the arguments, use that time so that you can come up with this answer that if you were asked that question, you can say, I have this device in my pocket, I use it to look at pictures of cats, and I contribute to that knowledge myself. Thank you.
This was me as a kid. Now, just so we're clear, that's not the actual picture of me as a kid. I use that to represent because the alternative doesn't really work so well for the story. Now, I'll accept responsibility for the calculator watch and the Apple II Plus, and even the giant trucker hat and the orange shorts, but the wallpaper was not my idea. So if you guys don't mind, I think we're going to stick with the original one. So I was probably around 6 or 7 years old the first time that I remember thinking that I was going to do something extraordinary with my life. I was going to change the world. And it's probably that same feeling that we all had as kids, you know, the one that has us dreaming about being a superhero or an astronaut instead of an accountant or a lawyer. But for me, it never left. I always carried it with me right here. And I went out into the world and I did some extraordinary things. You know, I performed on Broadway. I recorded with Grammy Award-winning musicians. I wrote books. I even started my own marketing firm. It was a resume that any mother would be very proud of, and yet for me, from my perspective, I had failed. I was a colossal failure because I couldn't point to one thing that had made a difference in somebody's life. Because for me, the idea of changing the world meant you had to do something like walk across the country in lieu of a cause, or maybe build a school in a third world country. Maybe it's running into a building to save somebody you don't know, or even climbing a tree to rescue a cat. And so armed with this, I saw life through this lens called I don't matter. I could die right now, and with the exception of a few people and close to me in my life, the world would continue to spin as if I would never existed. So I did what any rational person would do. I ran away. I picked up and I moved my entire family from New Jersey to Florida. And at the time, I was writing a really, really unsuccessful blog. It was about search engine optimization, which is bound to change the world. And I had two readers total, and I was both of them. But once I got to Florida, I started to change my voice, and I started to write about this thing that I couldn't seem to get rid of, this thing that was buried inside, this need to matter. And all of a sudden, I was getting 1,000 visitors to my blog on a daily basis with huge spikes in between. And about 1.5 years into this, I got an email from somebody. And in that email was a picture of what looked like a car that was buried in snow, and it had my name written on the outside. And so I had no idea what it was, and I started reading about it, and it was this guy that had been inspired by something that I wrote, and he quit his job, and he moved his family into the mountains, where he decided to dedicate the next couple of years of his life documenting these melting glaciers. And so in his letter, he told me all about his story. And what he had written was, what you are doing does matter, at least to me. What you wrote almost 1.5 years ago still rings in my head and encourages me to keep going. And he told me all about his project and what his family was going through and what he had done. And he ended his letter with, I hope this helps you know that you are changing the world, even if it is only one little seed of wisdom at a time in lots of people's lives. And that picture that was included in his email was not a car covered in snow. It was a little piece of the glacier. And he had written my name on it to document the role that I had played in this life-altering event that he had taken on. And it was in that moment that I realized that you don't have to walk across the country, and you don't have to build a school. You don't have to run into a fiery building or even save a cat from a tree in order to make a difference, in order to change the world. All it takes is doing one thing that matters. You know, one thing that matters for your family, doing one thing that matters for your community, doing one thing that matters for the world, or one thing that matters for the internet. And that one thing could be anything. Hug a stranger. Hold someone's hand for the last time as they take their last breath. Write a book. Deliver meals. Teach someone who can't read. Run a 5K for someone who can't. Or write a blog post that means something to somebody. Because that's how you change the world. If all we do is move one grain of sand, the earth will never be the same. Thank you.
Welcome. Punched today in the face. This is me. Good evening. My name is Daniel, and in my day job, I advocate on behalf of Tampa Bay, Florida's largest and fastest growing tech hub. Tonight, however, I'm advocating on your behalf. Why? Because each and every one of you is amazing. You woke up, you showed up, and that weeded out most. Statistically, you were the 1% of 1% just for attending an educational event this evening. Pretty incredible to ponder. But consider even your journey as a living being so far. You started out as just one cell. By week 5, you were a ball of cells that resembled a tadpole the size of a peppercorn. By week 9, you were the size of a grape. Week 22, as big as a coconut. At week 28, you could open your eyes, blink, and breathe. You survived birth. You smiled. You rolled over. By 6 months, you doubled your birth weight. You said your first word, you took your first step, you ran, you strung together your first sentence, you staked your independence. And for the next decade, you evolve exponentially. I'm talking physically, socially, linguistically. Your rate of growth and change during this period is unparalleled by any other time in your life. But then it slows, and I mean dramatically. While researching the catalyst of exactly why this happens, I found the answer to be more complex than we could ever imagine. However, 3 core external drivers are quite simple. Each exists for all of us. However, we each choose to respond to them differently. First, confines. These are rules put in place to keep us on the straight and narrow, while always beneficial to understand why man-made rules are in place. Not always the case to follow them to the letter. Second, context. It seems almost everything these days must be analyzed through the filter of how someone else might interpret it. Worse, if we're the source of somebody else's discomfort, it's now incumbent upon us to fix it. It's like stacking the deck for no winning hands. Third conclusion, the idea that a due date, a cutoff, test, semester, quarter, first 90 days, first 100 days, year, decade, century, destination, or even a rolling deadline will make or break anything other than your sanity is crazy itself. The net result of these is that they hinder growth, yours and society's, which hurts in turn you, which hurts in turn society. And they're arbitrary and subjective, and therefore should be taken with a grain of salt. Intellectually, we understand that these are in place to prevent the tragedy of commons. However, if we abide, common is what we get. We comply because understanding intent is to address inequality. However, we then proceed to assign a higher societal value to those who are different. When you think about it, confines just favor new, yet new is very rarely advancement. Growth is. Christensen rebranded Shumster, who rebranded Marx. Reese rebrands Blank, who rebranded Godin. Have any new ideas increased our innovation or successful startup rate? No. Contextually, every moment focused on the potential reaction is one moment not spent innovating. The more I get older, the only time I want to crack a Johari window is if that's my Uber passenger who just SBD'd on the 301. And lastly, conclusions are distractions. Win the battle, lose the war. Close the sale, tank your career. Make it pro, be forgotten without the Hall of Fame. Invent an idea, fail to change the world. Wisely ignoring, circumventing, or bending these rules are a choice, and one only you can make. Heck, if rules weren't meant to break, they wouldn't include punctuation. Secret, don't worry, you'll be fine either way. Just one of these choices allows you to create significant impact. So what are we talking about here? What's at stake? Growth, advancement, yours. And yours drives societies. I can't fathom higher stakes for you but also for us. So if these rules define what's possible, including the what, the how, and the why of your work, then your job is to literally do the impossible. It won't be easy, but I have 2 pieces of advice. First, don't second guess yourself, and don't let anybody else second guess you either. There is no Kaplan-Meier estimator for your potential. There is no control variable to judge your progress. There's no standard of measure for true impact. Second, go back and watch my talk from Unite Tampa Bay from 5 years ago. It's a field book to guide your perseverance. And if you ever lose faith, just turn over a dollar bill to be reminded that it takes a village to raise a ruckus, that God approves of your journey, and that it's our responsibility to create a new order for a new age. And that age is now. Redefine confines, reshape context, and draw a longer conclusion. Make an impact that only you can. Be you as... Thank you for having me out.
Wow. This is my first Ignite. I'm Susan, and I am last. I'm going to try. I'm so full of inspiration from all the great speakers tonight that I'm going to try to wrap it all together in this topic of what are you worth. We're going to talk about you. In the beginning, it's not a question. What are you worth? Your right to be here on this planet. It's just a fact. A beautiful, unconditional, uncomplicated fact. And then something changes. You start comparing yourself to other people, and it becomes a question that gets answered not by you, but by what you are getting reflected back to you. And we give that power to decide what we're worth to other people and other things around us. Now, I'm here today because I believe that the future of our world depends on you asking that question, what you're worth, and owning the answer for yourself. And if you think I am exaggerating or being a little overdramatic, I would think you shouldn't think that after a lot of the speeches that we've heard here tonight. But if you did think that I was exaggerating and being overdramatic, that's okay. All heroes feel that way in the beginning. And we need a hero. And we need you to be a hero. Because we are in the midst of an epic battle. And this epic battle is so integrated into the fabric of our lives that we don't even notice it. It is, that story about frogs, how you boil a frog, right? You put the frog in the pot, and then you bring up the temperature just a little bit at a time. So the frog stays comfortable and doesn't jump out of the pot. You guys know that story? Well, that's us. We are the frogs. That's us. I'm a little ahead. We are the frogs, and we need to jump out of that pot. Because the forces in this battle, in this epic battle that I've been talking about, they're fighting over wealth and power. But unlike gold or land or other keys to wealth and power in past epic battles, the key to wealth and power in this epic battle is you. The victor, his or her wealth is the sum total of your time and attention. The victor's power comes from the ability to influence what you see, what you hear, what you think, what you believe, and ultimately what you do. And the battleground is your smartphone, your internet browser, your television, your favorite social media platform. And just to give you a context, every year in the United States, $1 trillion is spent trying to influence you. $1 trillion. That's the total US marketing spend. To give you some context, the total US defense budget is just a little more than half that. Your collective attention, time and attention, is a $600 billion industry. How does that make you feel? And before you answer, consider this. These forces are battling over you not because of what you can produce or what you can create. These forces, your value to them is a function of how they can influence what you consume. In fact, for many of us, your value to the domestic and global economy as a consumer is greater than your value as a producer. That's why so many people are in debt. That's why we tolerate it as a society. So the question of what am I worth, and you taking responsibility for answering that question, is absolutely more critical than it has ever been in our history. Technology and innovation, you heard it many times today, technology and automation and machine learning are making your value as a producer increasingly irrelevant. You have to stand up and you have to decide, what are you worth? What is your purpose? What ignited your passion here today? You are the hero of your own story. Make it happen. Benefit of going last, you can go over. Thank you. And I'll be back.
We hope you enjoyed our first virtual Ignite, and we look forward to being with you in person at the Palladium next April for Ignite 2021. Perhaps you learned something new this evening. Maybe you were inspired to start a new venture, to challenge the status quo, or even take the stage next year and share your passion. Our community, our nation, and the world are going through turbulent times right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what the future holds. But challenges make us stronger. They make us better. Each year, I've issued a challenge to the community. This year, I ask that each of you look at the bridges around Tampa Bay as connectors rather than dividers. To remember you're stronger than you think, and to know that you can make a difference in the lives of others and in this community. There's always a signal, but we must look for it. I challenge you to look for that signal and the opportunities that arise from the current chaos. Human beings are resilient. And throughout history, we have risen up from turmoil over and over again. As we learned from Sean Davis's Ignite talk a few years ago, we can overcome any obstacle when we stop listening to that voice inside our head telling us no. Don't miss out on opportunity because it could be difficult or because you might fail. If you fail, pick yourself up. Acknowledge it's a learning process. Apply that knowledge and move forward. Our future, the future of our community, our prosperity, and a better life for all of us is not in the hands of government. It's in ours. Be authentic in your actions and intentions, and know that greatness can only be achieved when we challenge the status quo. In closing, I would like to adapt a phrase from Michael Johnson, which in many ways is the mantra for Ignite Tampa Bay, and it summarizes my 2020 challenge to you. Will you look for opportunities that really matter in the lives of others? Ones that arise from this chaos, and ones that will make a lasting difference. Will you choose to do more than just exist? I hope so. Thank you very much, and good night.